Okay, officially welcome to everyone. This is the July 16th meeting of the Province 5 Migration Ministry Network. And our topic tonight, we kind of have a special topic tonight, so we'll be having a couple of presenters, which I think you'll find very interesting about their recent trips to and beyond the Mexican border. I hope we'll have a good opportunity to hear from them and also to have a conversation with them. First, however, let me just start with an opening prayer. So let us pray. This is a prayer that comes from our outgoing Bishop Michael Curry, who did such a wonderful job. I think I've probably edited the prayer a little bit, but it still really touches me. It's kind of a tribute to Michael Curry. God on high, thank you for giving us awareness of your presence today among us and within each of us. We pray that your Holy Spirit will move our hearts and every human heart, that barriers which divide humanity will crumble and hatred cease, that our divisions will be healed, and that we may live in justice and peace. Through Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
As I mentioned, the topic tonight is to hear from a couple of eyewitnesses who've been to the border recently. As the invitation to the session said, we often have to rely on journalists and people who may have different opinions about what's going on or different agendas for why they're communicating what they are about what's going on at the border with Mexico. And we have a couple of people here tonight to talk to us who I feel I can really trust and who will, give us an accurate picture of what's going on and really a firsthand view. So one of those people is Silvia Huth, who is a co-coordinator of the Province 5 Migration Ministry Network. And yes, Silvia. And Silvia recently took a sort of mission trip to Guatemala, and so she'll be telling us about that experience and what she learned. And then our other speaker will be Martin Dickinson. Marty is a friend of Silvia's and mine from our work with the BMM network, and a very active volunteer at the National Cathedral in Washington, part of their sanctuary working group. Marty is also the person who introduced the Migration with Dignity idea and resolution, the idea of having a Migration with Dignity resolution, which of course was passed at half a dozen of our dioceses and also at the Province 5 Synod, and then at the General Convention. So a very, very successful stream of work that he began with us there, and that we pursued for, I guess, almost 2 years together. So that's been a real positive experience. So anyway, I'll just turn it over to Silvia. Silvia, I think you can share your screen if you want to, and let us know talk about what you learned in Guatemala.
Sure. Thanks, everybody. So as Jack said, my name is Silvia Huth. I work as a legal assistant supervisor for the Michigan Immigrants' Rights Center here in Michigan. We do a lot of work, with immigrants, and my group in particular, we work with unaccompanied minors. So let me start sharing my screen. Share. And okay, can you all see my screen now? Okay, so in April, I had this amazing opportunity to go on a mission trip with First Presbyterian Church out of Brighton, Michigan, to Guatemala, and they support a foundation called the House of Healing. But I thought I'd start here with a couple of little quick facts about Guatemala. So Guatemala is just to the south of Mexico. It is the most populous country in Central America. It has about 18 million people. It's the size of Pennsylvania. And because I work so much with unaccompanied minors, this statistic from the CBP, from Customs and Border Patrol, is very telling. From October to December of 2023, of all the unaccompanied minors who entered that quarter, 36% were Guatemalan, 24% Mexican, 18% Honduran, 7% Salvadoran, and 15% from all over the world. And although this is the statistic for one quarter, this has been a fairly consistent statistic for many years, actually. And the Northern Triangle, which are the countries of Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, historically send the most immigrants to the U.S. So we traveled to San Lucas Toliman, in the state of Solala, Guatemala. It is right on the border, not the border, it is on Lake Atitlan. So you walk down the street and you're at Lake Atitlan, which is a the lake itself is a tourist attraction. So the House of Healing, real quick, I just wanted to show you this. So from the rooftop of the House of Healing, you can see two of the volcanoes, two of the three that surround the lake. And right here is the lake. It was hard to see, and unfortunately, it was cloudy much of the time we were there, so we never really saw it in its full glory. But the House of Healing was the vision of Terry, a nurse from Michigan who traveled to Guatemala about 30 years ago and saw great need. She began a clinic in another location, but was ultimately called to start and sustain a health clinic and guest house in San Lucas Toliman, Solala. And I have to say, from my experience there, that it is a really well-run foundation. Of course, she's had 30 years to perfect it. It is run with donations, and it has the support of many churches around the U.S. First Presbyterian Church of Brighton was one of the, I guess you could say, founding supporters of the clinic, because she had, I believe her parents attended that church. So they have stepped up and been supporting her for 30 years now. There's also a Baptist church in Texas that's a big supporter. And as I said, others around the country. But her vision is to provide free healthcare, education, and housing to those with the gravest need. And in Guatemala, there is no free healthcare. You have to pay in advance for any procedure you need. So her clinic is free for those in need and with few resources. And one of the things they do there is offer treatment to malnourished kids, because that is a big problem in Guatemala among the poor. Another thing that she supports is education. In Guatemala, education is free through the 6th grade. However, families have to provide books, schools, supplies, uniforms, lunch, all the incidentals. And so she has a committee that administers scholarships to families who can't afford those expenses. And for just $200 a year, you can educate one child. And through this program, she has also, through the years, gotten to know many kids, and she has identified kids who have wanted to go on and do more with their lives. And she's secured high school and university scholarships for them. Several have become teachers, and several are nurses, and a couple of the nurses actually work for her right now in the clinic. So it's really an amazing program. The other thing that the House of Healing supports is the building of houses. This work is done usually through some sort of mission group, and just $2,500 builds a basic cinder block house with a tin roof, a door opening, and 2 window openings. Families have to provide the land that the house is located on, and they also volunteer 2 people to assist with the building. But the mission that comes down to build a house, and I think they do typically 5 or 6 houses are built per year. They supply all the expenses, which is basically $2,500 to $3,000. It also pays for a 3-person Guatemalan crew who they do the majority of the work. They do the prep work of the site and oversee us volunteers to make sure we're doing things right. They are vetted. The people who have to apply, there's an application process to qualify for one of these houses, and they are typically not right. They're in an indigenous community because much of Guatemala is indigenous, and the indigenous communities are usually the most in need. So here are some pictures of the house. So you can see it really is just a basic cinder block house. Here it's under construction. You can see this tall building in behind, and that house is actually being built with money sent back from the US by a Guatemalan person who's living in the US right now. He's sending money back, and his dad is overseeing the construction of his house, and he does plan to move back one day. Let's see. This is the person, the young woman we built the house for. She's only 15 years old. She has a 9-month-old child, and she was abandoned by the father. He left the village, and her family was not too happy with her, and so an aunt and uncle took her in and actually provided the land and applied for the grant of the house, and fortunately they qualified. So her house now, which here it is, and it completed, is directly behind her aunt and uncle's house. And as you see, it has a tin roof, but it doesn't have the windows, the doors, or a floor. And the idea is that the family provide those. So the church, or the House of Healing Foundation, doesn't cover everything. They want the families to step up and also supply what the finishing touches to the house. So here's the inside of the house. You can see the tin roof and some gifts that we got for her. In this picture, this young man, Juan, is the cousin of the girl who is receiving the house, and he was one of the family volunteers along with the uncle. And I got to talking to him and found out that he's 16 years old. He's never been to school. He's the youngest of 4. He has 3 older sisters. 1 or 2 are married, and their parents abandoned them a couple of years ago. And this tragic situation is not at all uncommon. I mean, this is one of the reasons that youth come to the US. They're looking for better opportunities. There's not many jobs. They may have been abandoned or recruited by gangs. In this area, there weren't any gangs though, but it was, oops, let me go back. Just a sad situation. So here again is the house of the young woman and the big house going up behind it. And here are pictures of several others in this town. And I noticed as we were driving out into more into the different communities that there were a lot of these big, beautiful houses going up. And I imagine all of them are being built with money from the US. The father of the person building this house has 3 sons. One has already built his house and has returned to Guatemala. The one has been in the US for about 10 years and will be coming back soon. I think this is his house and it's nearing completion. And he has yet another son who has been in the US for about 6 years and is sending money back. Again, very typical situation. In addition to helping build the house, we just did that in the mornings for 3 or 4 hours. Like I said, we were just we did do some real work, but clearly the Guatemalan crew did the majority of it. We also went up to the local school in the afternoon, and we were in this outdoor pavilion and offered a Bible class to the kids. And so each day we had between 20 and 30 kids, and they had so much fun, and we did too. It was really low key. One day we did the Bible story, creation story. One day it was rainbow fish. I've actually forgotten what we did on the third day, but we always had a story, games, a craft, and just spent time being with the kids. And this group of boys I was sitting with, oops, they're adorable. They were trying to teach me to count in their native language, which is Cachiquel. I did not do very well. Here are a few pictures from around the village. It's a mixture of old and new. You know, here's someone with a horse, women carrying firewood to light their stoves on their backs. Yet you also saw vehicles and driving through town, and also like nice, big, beautiful vehicles parked in the garages of these bigger houses. These the women up here in the corner making tortillas, mother and daughter, and the daughter would walk through the town selling the tortillas. You can see she has her I guess her basket on her head. The Mayan people in Guatemala are many are weavers, especially the women, and each community has its own colors and patterns. And here I got to observe, here's a mom and her daughter weaving, and they can, you know, they weave and create clothing for themselves, but then they can also go into the bigger town of San Lucas, Toliman, and sell the cloth and earn some money. So, and this young lady is 14 and she did her 6 years of school and is done. So now I want to tell you a little bit about Guatemala and why people come to the United States. Guatemala is a young and impoverished country with a very large indigenous population. And the indigenous population has been persecuted and subjected to colonialism and genocide ever since Europeans arrived. So 60% of all citizens in Guatemala are under the age of 29. 53% live in urban areas and 47% live in rural areas. 43% identify as indigenous, with the majority identifying as Mayan. And there are 22 Mayan languages. And so, as I said, the village that we were working in The language spoken there is Cachiquel. It's one of the bigger ones. Another major language spoken is Quiche, Quechua, Mam. So there are very many. Most learn Spanish. But the older lady who was making the tortillas, I was talking to her and she told me she didn't speak much Spanish. 56% of Guatemala's population identifies as Ladino, which is a mixture of European and indigenous ancestry. And in 2022, remittances from Guatemalans living in the US made up 19% of the country's GDP. And the statistics from the World Bank. The other statistics are from CGRS, which is the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies of the UC School of Law, University of California School of Law. And anyway, it's just amazing that 19% of their economy comes from US, from money sent back from the US, which is evident though in all the big buildings or houses you see going up. And I imagine that that is probably one of the pull factors. When you talk about immigration, you talk about push and pull factors. So push factors are conditions that force people to migrate, and pull factors are factors that encourage them to migrate. And I would say the allure of making money in the US and having a nice big house to move back to is a pull factor. Some more facts about the country is that 55% of the total population lives in poverty. 79% of indigenous Guatemalans live in poverty. Young Guatemalans living in poverty typically experience food insecurity and poor access to education. And 47% of children under the age of 5 have stunted growth. So I think these are definitely some of the push factors that cause people to want to leave and have a better life. So I don't know, is this in your way? Do you all see this? I apologize if you do. The 3 main root causes of migration, according to the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies, are the worsening impacts of climate change and environmental degradation. There were 2 major hurricanes that hit Guatemala, I think in 2020 and 2022. And then the deterioration of the economic and social conditions, including malnutrition, poverty, and unemployment. And that is certainly what I witnessed while I was there. And that these are the conditions that the House of Healing is trying to tackle. And then there is also increased violence in certain areas, especially gang, cartel, and gender-based violence. Ooh, let me see. I feel like I have left off a slide, but perhaps I did not. Let me see. I just wanted to point out here that there is discrimination in public education, such as the refusal to hire qualified Indigenous public school teachers. And I did meet 2 young people who have gone to university and qualified as teachers, and they cannot find a job. And another fact I wanted to point out is 6 out of 10 Indigenous children finish primary school, and 33% of Indigenous adults are illiterate. So let's see, and I believe that is all I have. So let me stop sharing. So I just want to finish up by saying, for me, it was particularly moving to be there because it really allowed me to see the people, or the live the way people live in Guatemala, and as a result, it helps me understand better why families are coming to the US, why they sometimes choose to send their kids on without them. And the other thing is that really touched me too is the church I traveled with. They've been supporting this mission for 30 years. Many of the people on this trip have gone 10, 11, and 12 times. So they're really committed to it. And I really understand after going why, because now I hope to go back with them next year. So they're doing great work there, and just being for me, it was a combination of just, being God's witness in Guatemala, being hopefully the face of God, showing a little bit of goodness that can come from the US. And the other thing is I felt like we really did meaningful and valuable work. So anyway, thank you.
Hey, Silvia, I have a quick question. This is Fatima from Indianapolis.
Sure.
The first slide that you showed on the statistics of children, was that at the border, or where did you get that?
Yes, those are publicly available numbers from the CBP, and I can provide the link to that.
Okay. Yeah, that was my
I'll look
question.
it up
Yeah,
and
thank
share
you.
that.
Sylvia, that was really beautiful presentation. Thank you. And really thought-provoking. I'm sure people have lots of questions, but why don't we ask Marty to share his experience? And I think then we'll have a kind of a opportunity to have a conversation with both of you. So Marty, please go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to talk about my experiences on the Arizona-Mexico border. In the first week of May of this year, everybody can hear me okay? In the first week of May of this year, I went back for my third visit to the Arizona-Mexico border. And I went there to catch up with friends who I've been in contact with who are working in ministries out there, to find out what is actually going on, because you hear so many things and so many different things from the media and politicians, and to catch up on what's actually going on. And then what I really like most of all is to be with the migrants and talk to the migrants and hang out with them and hear, what their perspective is, and so forth. And one of the things that really impresses me about the border area is the tremendous work that our ministries are doing out there. And I want to thank the Province 5 for the leadership that you guys have shown in Migration with Dignity and pushing the concept of migration with dignity throughout our church. It was your resolution that you guys passed from Province 5 that really was the final resolution that passed our church. And then now Migration with Dignity has become the policy of the Episcopal Church. And it answers the question not what are we against, and what are we doing here, what are we doing there, what are we doing somewhere else, but what are we for the long term, for now and forever? What is it that we stand for in our migration ministries? So thank you for that support. And one thing to understand is, well, there's a couple of things to point out. First of all, what is the border? Okay, the border is not a river border. The Rio Grande River goes to the south and to the east from El Paso, Texas. And between El Paso, Texas and California, we have a land border that crosses the desert. So the migrants who are entering our country are entering across land in Arizona. And the biggest area of the border of the land border is the border between Arizona and Mexico. One of the most impressive things for me on the border, in the borderlands, is the way all the ministries of all the denominations are working together. You don't even realize that you're in a different denomination. We have the Southwest Conference of the United Church of Christ. That's a big presence. Of course, the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona, and that's my main contact. The Keno Border Initiative, which is run by the Society of Jesus and the Roman Catholic Church. The Grand Canyon Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and I'm not even including everybody. There's tremendous collaboration, tremendous cooperation, and tremendous cooperation going on. And what I have left off here is on the other side of the border, the Roman Catholic Diocese in Mexico and the Anglican Diocese of Western Mexico. All are working together on these projects to assist our migrant brothers and sisters in this area. And I was specifically invited this time by my friend who leads the Artisans Beyond Borders, which is in Espanol, Bordando Esperanza, which is a ministry to develop the artisanship and self-respect of our migrant sisters and brothers, actually. And it's based in Tucson, Arizona, and Nogales, Sonora, Mexico. And it operates out of Grace St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Tucson, Arizona. And the Artisans Beyond Borders have workshops where people are practicing their cultural arts in both Mexico and in welcome shelters in Tucson and across the border. And I would have to say that Artisans Beyond Borders is art therapy of the highest order. Artisans Beyond Borders was founded by Valerie Lee James, who is an art therapist and an artist herself. And she's really carrying that out, based out of the Grace St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Tucson, Arizona. And of course, my first day with Valerie and with Father J.J. Bernal, who is the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona Borderland Ministry, canon for Borderland Ministry, we spent in La Casa de la Misericordia de Todas las Naciones, Nogales, Sonora, House of Mercy of all the nations in Nogales, Sonora. It's about 10 miles inside on the Mexico side of the border. And the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona is the principal sponsor of this. And on any given day, there would be 150 migrants waiting in various capacities to get their entry into the United States. They are prepared for the legal things that they're going to have to do. There's legal advice, there's medical attention. It's actually a small campus of buildings that was once a school. There were 55 children on the day that I was present and 100 adults. And the goal is to have migration with dignity, have things for them to do, have important ways for them to increase their skills, and to be secure. It's a secure perimeter. Security is one of the most important issues in this part of Mexico. To be secure and to be ready to successfully and legally enter the United States of America at the Nogales, Arizona port of entry. And there, Artisans Beyond Borders operates. They don't really operate it, but they fund it, they support it, they provide resources for it, but it's really operated by the migrants themselves, as you'll see in a minute. And let's see, this is a little bit. And then the second ministry that I visited was Tucson Samaritans. And what Tucson Samaritans, operating out of Tucson, Arizona, which is about an hour and a half north, It's an interfaith ministry that was started by Southside Presbyterian Church in Tucson. And it is the activity that I was part of was greeting migrants on the border as soon as they enter the United States of America, and greeting them along the wall and providing water, food, medical, first aid if they needed it. And you should know that, you probably do know this, that anyone who sets foot on the United States of America from another country and says, I am here because I want to request asylum, they have a right to have a meeting with a U.S. official on the border to explain to them the reason why they are requesting asylum. It's a right under international law and under U.S. law. So it's perfectly legal for them to enter. There is no, the border wall is a fiction, largely in the Arizona border. It's there to some extent, but you'll see in a minute that in the middle of the desert, there is no border wall, and you can just walk across. And the day that I was there, 250 migrants walked across, and we greeted them and assisted them as best we could, as you'll see. And this is the vehicle that we were in. It was a Toyota 4Runner. Look at those tires. I mean, the terrain is unbelievable. You are 4,000 feet in elevation. It's mountainous. You're going up and down along the border wall. It's not paved. There's a lot of ruts and holes, and it's quite an adventure to be out there in the middle of the desert and doing this. And this particular activity of Tucson Samaritans is overseen by Sister Judy Borg. That's her with the red shirt and the white cross that says Samaritinos on the back of it. She's 73 years old. She has got to be one of the most energetic people I've ever met. And she really can get that Toyota 4Runner going up and down those hills courageously and aggressively. And we got out there starting at 4:30 in the morning, and we got out there by 6 o'clock. It took us that long to get there from Tucson, but we wanted to get out there to greet the migrants before the Border Patrol arrived, so we could direct them and tell them what was about to happen and tend to their immediate needs as they entered the United States. Okay, so back to the Artisans Beyond Borders. Here you see Valerie Lee James, my friend Val, and she's an art therapist who started the Artisans Beyond Borders. And largely the Artisans Beyond Borders are concerned with embroidery. They're bordadoras and weavers, tejedoras, and they're practicing cultural arts. Many come already knowing their cultural arts, and the work that they do is absolutely beautiful. Here are some examples of the work that was hanging in the workshop at the Casa de la Misericordia in Nogales, Sonora. When I arrived there, these are just examples of the work they're doing. It's absolutely beautiful. And another one showed me there. This is what's called a manta, and these are cloths that people use in Central America to hold their food, to wrap their, put over their bread on the kitchen table and so forth. And these are done by embroidery. And this is one I happened to find in Grace St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Tucson. And you can see there's a tremendous, many of the embroidery work that they're doing. Examples of it are religious in nature and inspired. And of course, Virgencita refers to Our Lady of Guadalupe. Virgencita, guía mis pasos. Little Virgin, guide my steps. And this is something really, really important to all the migrants. And they feel they're totally protected by Our Lady of Guadalupe. And so there's tremendous devotion to her. everywhere you go among the migrant communities that I saw on the border and in Tucson itself after they've gotten into, into the United States. Okay, so let's see. Here we have examples of the work taking place. This, I think this is a shawl. I'm not sure what the name of this garment is. Really beautiful. It's woven, and it was made by Carla. Carla was teaching when I got there. She was teaching weaving. She is from Guerrero, which is a Mexican state in the south of Mexico. The most violent state in Mexico. The most violent and poverty-stricken state in Mexico. And after I left, I learned that Carla had her appointment with the border officials. And so you have to wait in line online to get your appointment, but she had her appointment and she was able to cross, and her destination is Los Angeles. And then you see some examples of the bordadoras. You see children, you see men, all working on embroidery things, and the Artisans Beyond Borders have had many exhibits throughout the United States to show their work. They're actually going to have something in September at the University of Chicago. You might be interested in going to see that. And when we showed up at Casa de la Misericordia, we saw a whole bunch of young guys standing around. They were taking apart a car engine. Well, why are they doing that? Well, they're doing that because it was a car engine of a taxi cab. They're doing that because they want to, while they're there waiting for their appointment, they want to learn job skills. And I don't know if you know this, but there's a horrible shortage. You probably do know this if you ever want to get your car fixed. There's a horrible shortage of auto mechanics in the United States. So there's opportunities if you can work in that field when you arrive in the United States to work for pretty good money, when you get here, if you have work authorization. So, but the time spent with the Artisans Beyond Borders was the main reason I was there on that particular day. And guess what? As I was, hanging out, speaking to the two weavers there, one of whom was from Senegal, I thought, well, why am I just sitting here? I want to do this. So they taught me how to weave, and they use what's called cricket looms, which are tabletop looms. They're kind of like for beginning weavers. And it's not as simple as it looks, but I really had a good time, and I got rather absorbed in this. And this work below is this is being done by a weaver named Yan Do, who is from Senegal. And I was able to communicate with her a little bit using my Google Translate. She spoke French, and she was really good. And after Carla leaves, Yande is her name. She is going to become the head teacher there. Her destination ultimately is going to be Maryland. So I'm hoping maybe I can, connect with her when she gets here. And then the day that I was there was April 30th, the day of the child, Dia del Niño and de las Niñas throughout Mexico. And the children were running around. They were, hopped up on, there were 55 children there of all ages. They were hopped up on candy and sugar and all that. And it was quite interesting. At a certain hour, some little child started yelling out, "Piñata, piñata, piñata." And we went down to the playground. They have a very ample playground there. And everybody was getting set to, shake the stick at the little, at the big piñata that was hanging from a tree and the candy falling out. What I'm showing you here is the leader of the Casa de la Misericordia, Sister Angelica Vacías Mejia, otherwise known as Lika. She is herself an artist. She does a lot of paintings around the place. She's very, very highly respected. This place is extraordinarily well run, and it's my third time being with her, and we really hit it off quite well. And here on the bottom you see Father JJ, who is the border ministry canon for the Diocese of Arizona, and Val and myself. Well, I'm not in the picture, I'm taking the picture, but we had huge donations that were packed into our cars, and we were taking them. That is the border right ahead. You see that shady area, that's Mexico. And we were taking them across the border. And then from there, we got a taxi cab to go into the shelter itself. So that gives you a kind of a snapshot of the day, of how you spend the day in La Casa de la Misericordia. Now, the next morning, I got up at 3:30 in the morning, so I could leave at 4:30 to go out with Sister Judy and 4 other people in our Toyota 4Runner, so that we could meet the migrants as they first entered the United States. And look at here what you're seeing. There's no border wall. You're 25 miles, 25 kilometers from the small town of Sasabe, Arizona. The wall comes to an end, and that's where the migrants cross, right there. The Sonoran Desert, you're in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. It is gorgeous, it is beautiful, it is treacherous, and it's dry, and it's hilly. And so it's very wearying, and it was wearying for me, you know, kind of to be that out there, you know, all day in the sun. It was windy. It wasn't real hot, but it was still very wearying, and you're at altitude. And the sole aim of the migrants entering that we saw on that day was to report to the Border Patrol so they could claim asylum in the United States of America. That was what they wanted to do. And we got there 6 o'clock, 6:30. We were the first people that they met when they entered the United States. And of course, our greeting to them was bienvenidos, welcome to the United States. And we told them that the Border Patrol was going to come at 8 o'clock. We gave them food. We had the back of the car loaded up with food, medical supplies, water, all manner of things. He wanted to know, I mean, Sister's been doing this for a long time. She wanted to count people. She wanted to identify who are the unaccompanied minors here. Many of them were. Most of the unaccompanied minors, actually, Silvia, were from Guatemala. She wanted to identify where they were from, where are the unaccompanied minors, so she would be able to see who are the women with babies, because when the Border Patrol arrives, they have priority for them to take them for processing. They go first, women and children, women with children, and unaccompanied minors. And of course, we told everybody it's 20 kilometers to the Border Patrol station, but it's only 11 kilometers to our camp. And we had a campamento, which is a place where there were tents, there's shelter, there's food, you'll see it in a second, there's possibility of internet, so you can call your relatives, tell them you made it across, place to rest, get out of the heat, get out of the sun. And we urge them to not keep going, but when they get to the campamento, stop there, and we will have food for them, and we will have water for them. Here's some other examples of migrants coming across. Now, this picture here that you see in the upper right-hand corner, doesn't it look hilly? But you know what the camera lens does is it stretches it out. So it's much, much steeper even than it looks in this picture. So when you're driving in the 4Runner, you're going up, you're going down, you're going up, you're kind of skidding going up. Are we really going to get up this hill? But we did, and we greeted quite a number of mine. You can see them holding their water bottles here. Yeah, and we met people from we were taking count of people, taking account of what countries they were from. We met people from Mexico, Peru, Ecuador, Guatemala, which is Guate, India, Mauritania, and Honduras. Those are the ones I remember and wrote down. But I think there were others. It was quite a large number of people on that one day, and that's what it is every day. It varies. It's usually in the hundreds, you know, every day. And then this is our campamento, our camp. They get there, and you can see how exhausting it is just to get to that point. I was exhausted. You see this here, there's a little stove area where my job was to cook soup. We're in the middle of the desert and I'm cooking chicken soup. I thought, what am I doing? But they really, really loved that. Everybody wanted it. They were hungry. It was nourishing. And we made hot water on top of these camp stoves. And we had this instant chicken soup in a little plastic cups and poured the hot water into it. Everybody loved that. They got water, they got fresh fruit. If they needed medical attention, we had a registered nurse with us, and it was quite an experience to be out there. We were in the campamento till about 2 p.m. And here you can see on the right-hand side, the Border Patrol is arriving, and all the people get lined up to report to the Border Patrol, request their asylum. The Border Patrol came up around 2 p.m. with 3 vehicles. They're supposed to have 4 vehicles, but one of them had broken down, so they couldn't really take everybody back once they got there. They had to wait in the camp. We ended up leaving at 2 o'clock, but we found out that by 5 o'clock they had sent the vehicles back again and they had picked everyone up. So I'm definitely going back. I think that our ministries in the borderlands are doing fantastic work with very limited resources, and they're collaborating and working together. The migrants totally appreciate what's being done for them. Migrants are very determined people. Many of them are like very young, some with young children, and they're really determined to get make their asylum claim, get on into the United States. Many of them are meeting up with relatives in cities around the country. Their relatives already know they're coming, and it was quite an experience to be out there. So thank you for the opportunity to share this. Here's a final picture for you. And he welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God and healed those who needed to be cured. Luke 9:11. And this picture right here in the upper left-hand corner, those 3 guys on the right-hand side are Guatemalan unaccompanied minors. The others are over 18, but these guys here, 3 on the right-hand side, are under 18. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share this experience on the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you, Silvia, two really fantastic presentations. I think this is probably the most interesting meeting of the Province 5 Migration Ministry Network we've had in a long time. That's really great. To me, it's really interesting to see the connection between the two, because Silvia was talking about what she observed in Guatemala, and then Marty was noticing that minors from Guatemala were showing up at the border in some numbers. So those kind of push and pull factors that Silvia was pointing out, had their impact in what Marty saw at the border. I'll just quote.
One thing I want to add. Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
You're speaking of the languages, and you mentioned the language mom. Well, I heard the language mom being spoken for the first time in my life while the migrants were waiting in the camp, And it was quite an experience. I thought, what is that? That is not Spanish. And Sister Judy told me, oh yeah, that's Mom. You know, that's what they speak. You know, it was quite interesting to hear.
Yeah, so I sometimes go to observe immigration hearings, and you'll find people from that region coming into their deportation hearings, unable to deal with the situation either in English or Spanish, and they have to find a mom translator to bring into the courtroom in order to proceed with the hearing. Let me just quote Katie, who said, "Thanks to both the presenters and the work that you've done. I'm so glad to have been able to see this. You are truly doing God's work," and that's certainly true. So let me, if people would like to ask questions, have discussion with, ask questions of either Silvia or Marty, please feel free. You can raise your, your virtual hand on the, or your real hand. Go ahead, Leslie.
Just a question, a follow-up question for Silvia, and then Marty, maybe you can elaborate too. Silvia, you said you better understood now why some of the kids were unaccompanied, and I know you referenced in some cases parents abandoned them, but what are some of the other factors that you think contributes to that? Because it's a little bit foreign concept for those of us sitting in this country.
So for migrants from Central and South America and Mexico, for that matter, what often happens is that parents choose to come to the U.S. To earn, money and to send it back. I probably most come with the idea of staying, so they'll come and they'll start a life here, and then eventually they'll send for the families to come. And so often kids, sometimes teenage boys, it's the largest group. They come often by themselves. They'll come sometimes using a smuggler, a coyote. Sometimes they just use an app and they walk, ride, hitchhike. It's very dangerous, by the way, especially crossing Mexico. They're often robbed, kidnapped. I mean, it's a difficult journey. When they travel in family groups, if you arrive at the U.S. border without your legal guardian and you're under the age of 18, then you're separated from your family. So even if you came with a grandma and grandpa or aunt and uncle, cousins, older cousins, it doesn't matter. If you're under the age of 18 and you don't have a legal guardian with you, they separate you and put you, you end up in a shelter system, which is operated by the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So, anyway, so that's one of the main reasons where what I see as far as kids coming is they already have family here. So they're coming to join their family. But when I was there in Guatemala and, there was that 16-year-old never been to school, even though there's school right there in the village, never been, and then abandoned by his family. I mean, he didn't express any interest, and I, of course, did not ask him, have you ever thought about coming to the U.S.? But then, like I said, you see all these big houses going up. You see people are doing better who have family members in the U.S. who can send money back. So I think that is a draw, but certainly lack of opportunity and violence is a push factor. So
I just want to add something like really important in working directly with migrants and encountering them. That our training in my ministry has been from Episcopal Migration Ministries, and they're very good. And one of the things, we had 2 whole sessions on trauma. Trauma is really important to understand, and in working with migrants. And you have to assume that every migrant who's entering, who's come through, and the stories that they have told us, we've heard all about this, but we have a rule that we're not supposed to ask them, what made you decide to come, or what event in your life? I mean, somebody that's an amputee We're not supposed to ask them, how did this happen? To prompt them for their story, because if we do that, that could trigger traumatic stress. And we also have to be alert to watch for people who are suffering from trauma. We have to know the signs of it, okay? However, what I've learned is if you hang out, people will tell you things. Or if you're in a room, other people are talking and you will hear things that they're saying, and that way you can pick up on. And if somebody voluntarily tells you something, yeah, I mean, oh, what the police do in Mexico, they stop people, they demand money from them every step of the way, every step of the way. One of the families that we're sponsoring right now, in our ministry, they were on a bus in Mexico. The father was in the bathroom of the bus. The bus had a bathroom, and he was in the bathroom of the bus. The police, I don't know if it was the police or the army, but they stopped the bus, they got on the bus, they went up and down the bus and demanded money from every single person on the bus. This happens all the time, constantly. And we heard about things from Colombia, people who were opposed to the government. I mean, but you have to listen, and you just have to kind of be able to take it in, but not try to prompt them to do it, because that could trigger trauma.
Go ahead, Carol, you have to unmute.
There we go. Well, now I have a question. One is, I don't understand Spanish, and I certainly wouldn't understand any of the indigenous languages. And yet it sounds like, Marty, you can just hang out and understand what people are talking about. That I'm confused about that.
You speak Spanish.
Oh, you do speak Spanish. So that lets you understand the indigenous as well?
No, I don't understand the indigenous, but I
okay.
understand this. I'm not fluent. I'm proficient, which is a little bit level just below.
They're different, right?
Yeah, when I start the conversation, like, do you need water? Do you need, please go to the camp.
Simple. Okay.
Please don't try to go in the camp, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I do understand.
Okay.
I do understand and speak it.
Okay. All right. Well, that helps. Okay. And then I just want to thank you and everybody that pushed that resolution, and it kept, I couldn't believe when I read that final resolution that was passed, that it actually said we're going to do this. We can't just become aware and pretend. I was just like, wow. I mean, I'm so impressed, and I thank you all so much.
Well, you guys in Wisconsin, I think you got it passed first, and you had three. You only have one diocese now.
Now it'd be easier.
Or you had one diocese, though you got three dioceses. So we could say, oh, look, we've got 11 dioceses that are behind us. If you merge sooner, we wouldn't be able to say that.
Yeah, Carol got 3 notches in her belt. It was the last opportunity to do that in Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
Oh, and I just want to say my first trip down in 2019 was led by Bishop Paula. Bishop Paula was with us from who's now the Bishop of Chicago. She was with the Diocese of Washington, and she and I became friends. I haven't been able to keep up with her because I know she's so busy out there with you guys, but she was fantastic. In the desert, in Mexico, and you got somebody there who really knows what's going on, and she's been right out there with us in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, she's doing a great job as the new bishop, still relatively new bishop here in Chicago. Everybody really loves her, and you're right, she's a wonderful person.
She made oatmeal for me every morning in the dormitory where we were staying. She said, oh, she was making oatmeal. She said, do you want me to make you some? I said, yeah. So every morning I got up and she was making the oatmeal, and she said, here, your oatmeal's almost ready, Marty.
Any other questions for our speakers? from now we're a little bit past our usual time of ending, so we could call it quits. But there was really a spectacular night tonight. So thanks to both of our presenters for doing such a great job.
And I just, one last word is, I think you can tell how complicated migration is, right? From the country that people are coming from, to the border where people are crossing, to the problems we now have in the United States. It is just a complex issue, and there is no easy solution. And again, that's where I am too grateful for the Migration with Dignity resolution that was passed by our church. And I certainly hope that it can become part of a bigger movement and a worldwide movement, that we can maybe solve some of these problems. We'll never resolve it, but and we certainly can't take in everybody, right? But there has to be a kinder way to do it.
And I would just like to add that, we talk about the migrants as if they're a problem and we need a solution. But the more I get to know them, the more I think we are the problem. They're not the problem. They're not a problem. They want to come and work. You just go out. Who's building the bridges? Who's fixing the bridges? Who's building the houses? Who's putting your drywall up? Who's cutting your lawn? They're not a problem. We're the problem. We're trying to stop them. So migration with dignity means we have to recognize, that we're the problem, and we have to stop being a problem and start being the solution.
That's well said. I think another thing you could say about it is the migrants are us. Because if it wasn't somebody who migrated in my ancestry, I wouldn't be sitting here. None of us would be.
Well, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, with that, why don't we ask Carol to say a closing prayer and call it a night.
I'd be happy to do that, and I'm a little self-conscious about it, so bear with me. But first of all, I want us to be thankful. To think for a minute about some things. Thankful for the time together now that we've had, and for the things we've heard, and for you all who've been down there and talking and sharing with us to help us get a little more sense of how it really is. And I'm thankful so much to our church for making a stand for migration with dignity. I just can't say enough about that. So with that, let us start with a moment of silence and invite in ourselves these three friends: courage, compassion, and commitment. Dear Lord, may these three impulses thrive within us, assisting us in continuing to build a sense of community with one another, within this group, and with all other people out there in the wider country that we would come in contact with. May the spirit of courage, the spirit of compassion, and the spirit of commitment sustain us, our families, and everyone we touch through today and tomorrow and forever. And now let us give glory to God, whose power working in us will do infinitely more than we can ever ask or imagine. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Thank you all for your time. Good night.
Good night.